Looking for fascinating conversations with industry thought leaders? Want to get the inside scoop from local legends? Interested in the stories behind the stories from celebrated visionaries? This is your home for the best our university has to offer. Welcome to We Are IU.
Welcome to We Are IU. I'm your host, JD Denny. Today I'm talking with IU's Dr. Richard DeMarchi. Dr. DeMarchi has been a key player in the development of Ozempic and similar GLP-1 drugs, which have provided patients outstanding health and weight loss effects. We're here in his lab at the chemistry building on the IU Bloomington campus. Richard, good to see you. Welcome to We Are IU. Why has Ozempic and the drugs that have followed made such a big impact?
The reason why it's made such a difference is because it's transforming people's lives. I mean, we're now at a point where we are managing excess body weight in a way that we traditionally would manage excess glucose, excess cholesterol, excess blood pressure. And so it is changing people's lives. And I must say, I'm just overjoyed with what we have witnessed to this point in time.
Can you talk about like the maybe on the individual level, the kind of results people are seeing, and maybe starting with where we were with Ozempic? And I know that these drugs have just really made advances and gotten better.
There is a spectrum of responses, but for those who have done well, the outcomes have been truly spectacular. The median response to these registered drugs in obese subjects that don't have co-diseases such as diabetes can be anywhere from 15 to 20 and even beyond a percent reduction in body weight. For someone who has a body weight starting at 100 kilograms, roughly 220 pounds, that can represent as much as a decrease of a pound per week over the course of a full week, as much as a 50-pound reduction in their body weight. There are individuals that are part of what has been termed the 100 Club that have lost over 100 pounds. And, they share with me how dramatic and transformative that has been to the quality of their life. And obviously, that is a compliment that I receive on behalf of the so many individuals that were a part of allowing this to get to this point of being the medicines that they represent.
Amazing. And I'd like to get back into some of that science, but maybe you could take us back first, 5 decades perhaps, as you started your career in this field.
I arrived at Indiana University as a graduate student in the summer of '74. So I think that's 51 years, right? And my interest was in the chemistry of these large molecules, so-called macromolecules, peptides and proteins, because we were unable at that point in time to make molecules of this complexity in a laboratory setting that looks similar to the one we have here. And I always believed that if we could make these molecules, that we would find miraculous uses for them. Insulin was precedent setting. But remember, at that point in time, it was being extracted from the pancreas of pigs and cows. Growth hormone was being extracted from the brains of cadavers to be given to children. And even follicle stimulating hormone, a hormone used to promote fertility, was being extracted from the urine of nuns. And so this was not pharmaceutical industry basic business. But if we could get control of the chemistry, I always believed that we would find, as I said, miraculous uses for these substances, and nothing speaks louder than these anti-obesity peptides. But there were steps leading up to this that were showing us the way.
So if we go back there, I love that phrase, getting control of the chemistry, making the molecules. So what does that mean? Take us So we're in the mid 70s, and that's not really possible. You're pulling these from natural places, and where does the lab enter?
Yeah, so as I finished my graduate work here on protein chemistry in a state-of-the-art laboratory led by a principal investigator named Professor Frank Gerd, I went to finish my formal education with a postdoctoral fellowship at the Rockefeller University with a fellow named Robert Bruce Merrifield that had developed chemical procedures for making these peptides in round bottom flasks, in fume hoods of the type that you see in this laboratory. And so as I left the Rockefeller, I joined Lilly, who was a first mover in working with the California biotech company named Genentech in producing human insulin in those microorganisms in bacteria. So at that point, we had the emergence of chemical procedures and biochemical procedures for making these molecules, and it was left for us to determine what could we do with them in a medicinal sense. What therapeutic outcomes might we achieve with this newfounded chemistry?
So help me with the timeline. Now we're into the 80s, I would suppose, and further advances. Now that you've got some of the biotech available to you, where does it lead?
So I arrived in Indianapolis the first days of 1981. 1982 was when there was the first registration, at the end of 1982, of human insulin that just got better and better as the decade proceeded. And in 1983, the gene for this hormone that we know as GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, was reported in Nature by an investigator who had been at Chiron Biotechnology and had just moved to the University of Chicago. Svetlana Moishev, Jens Holtz were instrumental in characterizing that substance, showing its biology in cells and animals. But the big question was, would this translate to humans? And the bigger observation was, would it translate beyond diabetes?
And if I have it right, what you developed here at IU and kind of had conceptualized before that was the technology that kind of leads to the GLP-1 drugs that we see today. So what does that look like between 2003 and, let's say, 2015 or 16, where it starts to get to market?
Right. So at the time that I arrived at IU, it was established that the GLP-1 itself had these special properties: the ability to control hyperglycemia, the ability to control body weight, and it was a matter of seeing what degree of efficacy that you could get in patients. I chose not to replicate that work. We had begun work on other related hormones, and along the way we began to see similar properties in their ability to decrease body weight. And so what we began to ask was, could you chemically integrate these different hormonal activities into a single molecule? There was no precedent for doing that at this point in time. And what we did in collaboration with my partner, Matthias Chupp, who was a professor of pharmacology at the University of Cincinnati and did all of the animal experimentation, is demonstrate that, yes, when we put two of these hormones, GLP-1 together with glucagon, or GLP-1 together with GIP, or eventually all three into one, we significantly increase the performance of these peptides, and that peptide, the integration of two hormones, was showing a bump in an efficacy from a mean weight lowering of about 15% to 20, 21, 22%, which is a 50% increase.
So let me take it back a second, because that breakthrough required kind of getting outside of conventional thinking.
Yeah.
And you've talked about that. Can you talk about that a little bit more, how the university setting allowed you to kind of get to this type of breakthrough?
Yeah, universities are unique, and they really foster and promote inventive research, creating knowledge that just didn't exist or flies in the face of conventional knowledge. We know what we know. We know what we don't know. But there's this bigger space of we don't even know what we don't know. And as you do your experiments, you learn things that you just didn't know before. And so if you look at the performance of these triple agonists, right, as spectacular as they are, I've been asked, so what's so great about 1 + 1 + 1 = 3? But if you understand the story, it was 1 + 0 - 1 = 3. And that is this component of glucagon had been thought to be necessary to antagonize because it raises blood glucose. It increases metabolic rate. And as a result, you are less fuel efficient. You lose weight. When you integrate it in with GLP, you get the best of both worlds, right? The GLP is buffering the undesired consequences of glucagon, and glucagon is turbocharging the ability to lower body weight. When you bring in GIP, you get an additional element of efficacy, improving metabolic sensitization. But it was only when you combine them together that you begin to see this additivity, really synergy, to achieve superior patient outcomes. And a university, again, has provided the ability to do that. You do this basic inventive research in an unencumbered environment. The venture community provides funds to translate it, to show that it's more than just cells and animals. And it is the pharmaceutical companies that largely have the muscle, the capabilities to register these drugs, doing them in large number of patients across the globe. And all three are necessary, but each tend to be more deeply capable in different domains of the value chain.
Right. And within that university setting, IU has been extremely supportive along the way. Is that
Yeah, so
Is that a big
IU,
part of it?
IU has been spectacular in providing me the space, quality students. I chose to locate in Bloomington because of the history and the excellence in chemistry, right? Remember, fluoride was developed here, and placed into toothpaste. Think of how many patients have benefited from that phenomena. So there's just such a tremendous rich history on this campus that is more than chemistry, it's biology, and just the environment is so conducive to creative thought. Just walk this campus, see the liberal arts. It just promotes orthogonal thinking.
Yeah. I want to get into the science, but I want to take you back though for a second to those early years and why you decided on IU in the first place. And I think it has a lot to do with that history and that reputation at the time in biology and chemistry. Can you speak to that a little
Well,
bit?
there's a spectacular history, but for me, the reason why I came to Indiana is because the textbook that we had used for educating undergraduates in biochemistry had been written by two professors, one of them then chairman of chemistry, Jean Cordes and Henry Mahler. And I just happened to meet with Jean Cordes in a lecture he was giving while I was an undergraduate in Florida, and he convinced me of the excellence that the department had in protein chemistry, which is what I wanted to study. And it turned out to be a lifelong association. As John Denver said, going home to a place you'd never been before. And I didn't think that I would be here for the 50 years that I've been associated with Indiana. But it's a manifestation that universities such as Indiana University, certainly Purdue as well, Notre Dame, are magnets for foreign talent that we need so badly in the state of Indiana to diversify how we view the world, how we view technical problems, because diversity should be celebrated in my mind because it helps us see things differently.
That's great. And maybe we could move into that science a little bit. I mean, seriously, how do these things work? How is it that these diabetes drugs and the chemistry and the thought and the path that you took leads to appetite suppression and this dual efficacy? How in the world?
Yeah, right. So GLP-1 as a hormone has several notable activities, and I mentioned it stimulates insulin synthesis, it stimulates insulin release when you're hyperglycemic, which makes it ideal for the treatment of maturity onset diabetes. But it also has a profound ability in the gut to stimulate, to suppress appetite. And that is the so-called gut to brain communication that is telling you that you have received nourishment and you've received enough nourishment, stop eating. Right, you're now satiated, and so that property is of fundamental importance to decreasing body weight. But improving insulin sensitivity lowers insulin levels, and insulin is anti-lipolytic. It's stabilizing your fat deposits. That works against losing weight. You then complement that with glucagon, which is a catabolic hormone working in the opposite direction, and what you create is a futile cycle, meaning you are synthesizing and degrading macromolecules, glycogen, protein, and in doing that, you're consuming energy. You consume energy, you lower your body weight. Yeah. And GLP-1 is the last component, further decreases the your appetite and improves metabolic sensitivity. It's not just insulin. It's leptin. It's all these endogenous hormones that are involved in your physiological control of body weight. And so you get this spectacular outcome. It's that concert integration of these hormones that achieve this spectacular result.
Let me take a swing at I'm a layperson. Let me take a swing that it's suppressing the appetite, which I get, but also what you're saying is that it makes the body more efficient at the molecular level. And it allows it almost like turbocharges the kind of weight loss that you're talking about. You're taking in less, but you're using less more efficiently.
That's correct. But we have had appetite suppression. Amphetamines have been used, and what over time you lose efficacy, tachyphylaxis, right? Mm-hmm. They no longer respond. And so it's more than just appetite suppression. As I said, in glucagon, what you're purposefully doing is adding a catabolic substance. You are making yourself fuel inefficient. This is like taking a high energy, high efficiency automobile and making it a gas guzzler. And in so doing, right, you are losing weight, but you have to do that in a way that is safe in a chronic mode. And that's why the integration with GLP-1, that's why the integration with GIP. And it's tough to do. Chemically, this is the equivalent of a Rubik's Cube. If you've ever tried to get 3 faces just right, and when you go for that third face after getting 2 correct, you end up disorganizing those first 2 faces. So I am as proud of the work that my students and my associates have done in bringing us the chemistry, because that's where the miraculous biology derives, right? Yeah. The pharmaceutical industry, at the end of the day, is a precious chemicals business. We sell chemicals, and in this instance, they're macromolecules.
And now, major breakthrough. We have the weight loss, we have all of the benefits, but it becomes wildly popular. And with that, it gets into kind of the mainstream. Could you talk to any kind of myths or misconceptions or problem? I know shortages became an issue. Like maybe speak to some of those types of issues and your take.
There were some pragmatic issues to be dealt with. Can you make enough of this peptide to supply the demand, because the demand exceeded the capacity, right? So that was one. The second was the fact that these are parenteral products. They have to be injected, and that is not the preferred or conventional way of administering drugs. We tend to lean towards taking an oral tablet each day. But I think when you talk about myths, the one that resonates with me are these vanity drugs? Are these being used for cosmetic purposes, or are these being used for medicinal purposes? And that is one where I've often found we are attacking the obese as opposed to attacking obesity. We don't chastise hypertensive subjects or diabetics for taking their insulin or taking their ACE inhibitor or their calcium channel blocker, right? But in this instance, because there is this cosmetic appeal of lowering body weight, we're leaning heavily on people who choose to decrease their body weight. Now, using pharmacology is a supplement for a proper lifestyle. I'm not arguing that these drugs should be used where you can control your appetite, where you control your energy expenditure with exercise. In fact, that should be the foundation. But decades of history, human history, has shown us that is insufficient, because if it were not, we wouldn't have this epidemic of obesity. And obesity is clearly correlated with hypertension, with rheumatoid arthritis, with type 2 diabetes, with osteoarthritis and endocrine-dependent carcinomas. So this is being used for good medicinal purposes. And if that doesn't satisfy the people who find need to criticize those who are using these drugs, I would lean to the wisdom of Billy Joel. This is my life, okay? Go ahead with your own life. Leave me alone, right? If I want to use these drugs and they've been registered and shown to be safe and I can access them and I can afford them, by God, let people do it. We color our hair, we cut our hair, we color our fingernails, right? People do surgery on their eyelids, on their eyes, often for cosmetic purposes. God bless them, right? It's not for me to judge.
That's right. And just to put a point on what you said, that obesity, it can lead to these other issues, either right away or over time. And it's almost as a public health measure, it is reducing the obesity, but also everything that comes with that or could come with it.
It's not a small public health dilemma. I mean, we're talking about roughly a third of the adult population that is of excess body weight or overtly obese or extremely obese. And it has these huge consequences. And so what I see with the success of these drugs is a transition occurring where, instead of being exclusively focused on treating health, right, treating disease, we're now looking to strengthen health. Well, that's what vaccination was doing in a prospective way, is diminishing the risk that you would have an undesirable outcome. And so can we use now this as a foundation to strengthen muscle, to strengthen bone, to increase cognition, to extend health span, maybe even lifespan, but that last decade of life is where we see these catabolic consequences of obesity and just aging in general. And so can we make that a healthier period, which diminishes the cost for society financially, but certainly for the patient in terms of quality of life?
That's where we are now. Maybe we could take it a little bit forward looking. And I've heard you speak of just kind of biotechnology generally. I mean, where do breakthroughs like this in the endocrine system and with these hormones, what does that lead you to think about with other functions of the body?
Yeah, when you're driving your car, you look in the side view mirror and it says objects that are in your rear view mirror are closer than you appreciate. And so when I think about the 50-year journey, 51 to be exact, it all seems as if it occurred yesterday, when in fact it has been a half century. But what we were doing then, as I indicated, was rudimentary relative to what we have today. And it's not just these macromolecules for treating obesity, it's a host of other diseases where antibodies and proteins, antisense RNA-based drugs have had a profound effect on diseases we couldn't even begin to manage. And so now jump ahead. Take us 51 years forward. We're in the year 2076. That's the tricentennial year. And think about what is going to happen in that period relative to what has happened in this first 40 to 50 years of biotechnology. It's akin to Lindbergh crossing the Atlantic in the late 20s, and then we're on the moon in the late 60s, 40 years. What does that mean in a biological sense? Back in the days of the 70s, we didn't understand the science, the molecular basis of vision, the molecular basis of immune recognition. It's all known to us now, right? We can manage obesity. What about memory? What is the molecular basis of a memory? Will we be able to intervene in maintaining memory, in restoring memory, and growing memory? If you think there's jealousy right now, a vanity about somebody decreasing their body weight by 20%, imagine if your neighbor is able to increase their cognition by their IQ by 20%. Is that going to make the rest of us feel a little dumb? Are we going to be compelled to want to be that smart? What is the limits of human intelligence? How empowered can a single brain and a community of brains be, and can they solve the societal problems that plague us? Can we increase empathy? Can we make oxytocin, people more interpersonal, less of the societal challenges that come from overt aggressive behaviors? IU has been of seminal importance. My time on this campus has driven my creativity beyond that which I have experienced in other locations. I don't know what it is, but there's a certain magic for me in being here. And I'm so enormously grateful to the administrators that have supported the work and made me welcome here, and doubly so to the scientists who have done the work. I'm just pleased to have had a career in being part of it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Richard. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of We Are IU. Your home for fascinating conversations with thought leaders, legends, and visionaries from the university we know and love. New episodes available monthly at myiu.org.